Hello everyone, I'm Eric Richter, and this week we will be talking about developing an ESP curriculum for call centers and visual communication. We will be starting with Lockwood's article on overseas call centers. The context for Lockwood's article discusses offshore support services that could include technology support, accounting, and customer support. His primary focus regards customer support representatives, or CSRs, who speak with customers to resolve issues as they arise. Depending on the company, these could be different kinds of issues. Many companies use this means, as it is often more economical than domestic call centers, so this is a very common issue. Primary locations that Lockwood are talking about include India, Costa Rica, and the Philippines. He states that the Business Processing Association of the Philippines reported in its annual report that the lack of English language proficiency was one of the largest threats to this burgeoning industry, particularly in the call centers where being skilled in spoken English is a core competency. This was found on page 14. In the past, companies that use offshore call centers typically perform their own English assessments and training in what skills and communicative competencies would be necessary for an effective customer support representative, or CSR as Lockwood calls them. Many of these programs are developed by those who do not have TESOL qualifications and experience. So many of those who are actually projecting their influence do not know for sure, but may be shooting into the dark as to what issues are actually causing them problems. These companies commonly attribute communication breakdown to mother tongue interference, which generally includes pronunciation or pragmatic differences between two languages, or to grammatical inaccuracy, which could be errors or misunderstanding of grammar rules. Lockwood disagrees with these findings, and what he found helpful will be discussed in an upcoming section. The way that these companies would generally try to solve those issues just addressed were heavier emphasis on explicit grammar and pronunciation training, which would be accent neutralization. So they thought that grammar issues and pronunciation errors were causing communication breakdown, whereas that was not true. And so explicit grammar and pronunciation training would be used without effect. They would also use scripting in responses for the customer support representatives, which was like, as there were issues in the calls, customers may become upset and need a certain spur-of-the-moment judgment call that customer support representatives were unable to meet due to either the script restricting their ability to address it or due to just not having the pragmatic understanding of the language. So even though a customer might have an issue that was not resolved, the scripts would have the CSRs continue to try to upsell products and would just further make the problem larger. They would also import soft skills training packages that really assumed native fluency. In this case, soft skills training might be how to speak to a customer in a better way, but they did not take into the account that these are English language learners, and as non-native speakers may not have the command of the pragmatic features that help you soften or be polite in those kind of situations. So what they actually needed is on the next page, was less training on language skills and accent neutralization, more emphasis on cultural understanding. So this is going to play a big part in understanding how culture understanding goes into communication cross-culturally. And so even if the students had a command of English, what kind of skills might they need to perform their job better? More emphasis on pragmatic skills, including idioms, tonal patterns for mood and politeness, and soft skill packages that were tailored to the actual needs of an ELL rather than being imported from a native speaker soft skills package. Chapter 5, ESP for Police, was a during experience course. Chapter 6, ESP for Medical Professionals, was a post-experience course. The current case works with students who are pre-experience, knowing little to nothing about the content in question. This is Chapter 7 in Bass-Dirkman. This course was designed in response to having a general writing skills course that used high-level topics from visual arts. In this context, students had difficulty navigating both the content portions of the class and the writing portions. The findings implied that academic writing cannot be separated from disciplinary content. For meeting the needs of his students, this instructor split his focus to entail both the language needs and the content needs of his students. While organizing this course, the instructor had to recognize and build on prior knowledge and teach based on the unique aspects of writing that were tied to that field. So just consider for now that when we write about math and history and sociology or pedagogy, we address these papers in a different way than we would if we were talking about some kind of piece of art. On the next slide, there is a list of principal considerations to take into account while teaching both content and language simultaneously. This was provided by Bass-Dirkman. In this case, the teacher was also a content specialist first and not an ESL teacher primarily. So he was using the content to drive the language learning. Principal considerations that were given included considering the student's prior textual experiences and subject knowledge. So if the student didn't know anything about art, then that might need to be addressed before starting to talk about art theory and history or different aspects of it that are a little more complex than you can just jump into. 2. Focusing on socio-historic practices and beliefs informing contemporary understanding of the subject. 3. Exploring genres and textual practices to foster students' understanding of these same socio-historic practices and beliefs. 4. Making disciplinary and institutional expectations for writing transparent. So if the guidelines for what we expect of our students are unclear, then we're probably going to get inconsistent results. And so this needs to be institutionalized and transparent so that everyone can see what we are hoping for. And 5, creating dialogue around identity and cultural differences. So, contrasts with this discourse with other fields such as sciences include that when you're talking about art, you're going to use more poetic language, imaginative and playful modes of writing. Multimodal nature of discourse. So often we'll use visual images with the text and not just one in isolation from the other. I rarely see a image being used as some part of historical literature outside of an art-based discipline. The writing may highlight an emotional response and reflect what the writer's emotions as well as reflect that the writer's emotions as well as mind are engaged. So it spans into a broader section of engagement than just academic writing will do. This also has different kinds of jargon that incite feeling or have like idiomatic or pragmatic usage that are not explored in normal academic writing. So we need to consider these differences when we engage in some kind of discipline that's a little more abstract than as like art. Particular citations may be foregrounded. Writing is not judged according to the criteria of accessibility and clarity. The transparent, traditional forms of academia is so highly valued in scientific writing. So we're not judging our students based on clarity in the same sense, but we are in an artistic field wondering what language would incite emotion, and it doesn't have to be clear to be effective. So this is a very different principle that doesn't translate. And the principles of rationality and objectiveness embraced in scientific discourse do not apply. And this list was provided from Bass-Dirkman in the section 7.3. So, as we conclude the visual communications distinctions, students have different needs than they might in another field, and so we need to address the student needs in a way by looking at who they are, where they come from, and what kind of language is actually used in the texts, rather than just assuming it's going to be the same as other academic subjects. If the student does not have the prerequisite understanding of the field, then we need to meet them there, and the language can help us meet the content needs, and the content can help us meet the language needs, according to Vesterkman. So our questions for the week are: what resources would you use to determine priorities and needs in an offshore call center? This could be a corpus, a discourse analysis, a genre analysis, or anything else that we found. These are just what we've gone over in class. And secondly, in a customer service-based job, how is cultural understanding related to communicative competency? How would you address the balance between English language skills and cultural understanding? Thank you all for your time. The references, of course, were Lockwood, J., 2012, Developing an English for Specific Purpose Curriculum for Asian Call Centers, How Theory Can Inform Practice, and Vesterkman, Chapter 7, Academic Literacies in Visual Communication. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you all have a great week.